From the BBC World Service, in association with ABC and Akashvani, this is Stumped.
Hello and welcome to Stumped, your intercontinental hit of news, features and debate from the quirky world of cricket. I'm Alison Mitchell, having flown from Brisbane and the third test match of the Border-Gavaskar Trophy back to Adelaide now for the run into Christmas, where I'll be with my wider family and cousins for Christmas Day. So starting to feel quite festive. Warmed up, though, by having been to pub choir the night the Brisbane Test finished, a mass singing event. We all sang a bit of Frankie Valli. It was very festive. If you've never heard of it, look it up. It's a great experience.
Very good, Ali. I hope you've got your guitar with you as well. And I don't know whether you go down to St Kilda for a swim. It's a bit chilly there, but enjoy the Christmas festivities. Yeah, that's right. So I just hope everyone has a nice break, and where I'm sitting looking forward to the Boxing Day Test with a series tool very much alive after that drenched match up at the Gabba, where I think they lost about 260 overs of a 5-day match, which tells you there wasn't much cricket played.
Well, all I can say from the Indian perspective is that India would be glad there were that many overs lost because of rain. This is Charu Sharma for Akashvani. I'm really happy to be back home in Bangalore. My last station was the holy city of Banaras, Varanasi, which they claim to be the longest living city of over 5,000 years. Wonderful being there. Of course, the Ganga passes through anyway. More on Banaras and the Ganges later. But I don't think my physio was particularly happy because I've been out for almost 3.5 weeks now. And that certainly hurt my spine surgery rehab. But I'm glad to be back. And by the way, I travel again to go to the final week of the Pro Kabaddi League in Pune. That's next week. But for now, we're on Stumped. I'm really happy to be back.
Glad to have you, Charu. And it's funny you mentioned physios. Lucky for you, we've got a physio coming on the show. Not going to be giving you a private clinic, however, but England captain Ben Stokes has suffered a recurrence of his hamstring injury. So we're going to be finding out from a physio on just how players are being managed with their increased workloads these days. But there's only one place for us to start, and that is reflecting on the Border-Gavaskar Trophy, but also the news that not one but two legends of the game retired from international cricket this week. New Zealand fast bowler Tim Southee and Indian spinner Ravichandran Ashwin. And it's fair to say that Ashwin, with more than 500 test wickets to his name, took everyone by surprise when he made the announcement at the end of that rain-sodden third test of the Border-Gavaskar Trophy in Brisbane, a drawn match in which he didn't play. Goodness, Ashwin is 38. He departs as the 7th highest wicket taker in Test history, and his 537 wickets have come at an average of 24 in 106 tests. Second only to Anil Kumble's 619 Test wickets amongst Indian bowlers. Meanwhile, it had always been the plan for Tim Southee to call it a day after New Zealand's third and final test of their home series against England. That doesn't mean his loss will be felt any less. He managed to go out on a big win, although just the 2 wickets for him in his final test, as New Zealand beat England by a whopping 423 runs. Southee retires with 391 test wickets and 776 international wickets in all, the most by any New Zealand player. Charu, if we start with Ashwin, yes, I mean, this was sudden, and some theories are already emerging about why now. But what can you say about him and his legacy?
Well, without doubt, sudden. You mentioned that. I think it's very unexpected. And the least one could have expected is for him to last the series out. And of course, there are lots of test matches at home now coming up where Ashwin in the next year or so, if he wished to continue, could have picked up bagfuls of wickets. So, yeah, the timing was certainly strange, caught everybody by surprise. And you mentioned some theories about why. I don't want to enter the conspiracy theory bandwagon, but obviously he was not enjoying himself quite as much as a professional sports person needs to keep motivated to carry on. And we all know that, of course, he wasn't played, and then he was played a bit and didn't play too well in one of the test matches. He just seemed to get fed up all of a sudden, because you mentioned that press conference, that too was terse. And I'm not saying that he was in any way huffy, but it was just handled in a very, let me get away from here manner. And that's been proved by the fact that he didn't hang around much. He just left the very next day, back home for India. So it's a big loss, of course, to India because of what he's done. His body of work he's spoken about is phenomenal, and so too his ability. But they're a bit like Dhoni, I suppose, when he did the same thing in Australia a few years ago. This was, nobody was expecting this, Alison. But what about you, though? Because you were right there. And what is your thought? You mentioned the suddenness of it, but was there any inkling at all? And what do you make of his performances? Because he took only 1 wicket in the second test, and was that something that might have led to his early exit? Or was there any rumbling at all? Any feelings, thoughts?
Yeah, well, I only mean going by what Rohit was saying in the press conference, in that, Ashwin had said to him when Rohit got to Perth and Ashwin hadn't played the Perth test match, and he intimated then that he was thinking of calling it quits. And it sounds as if Rohit had to almost sort of persuade him to take the field and play in Adelaide. And these are the things that are being, quite widely reported amongst some of the Indian media. But certainly towards the end of that fifth day, rumours started to circulate that somebody in the Indian camp was retiring, but nobody quite knew who. And so the cameras were being trained on the Indian dressing room, and it was wondered whether Rohit was going to be stepping down, because he kind of lingered as the players left the field for that last time after India had been in the field. But then then Kohli was seen hugging Ashwin, and suddenly it was, is it Kohli who's going to be stepping down? But no, it was a hug for Ashwin, because it was Ashwin who was going, which only became evident when he arrived in the press conference alongside Rohit. So it was quite an intriguing sort of, few hours that were unfolding with no one quite knowing what was going on. I actually saw the Indian team in Brisbane airport on my way to Adelaide. They were going into a different departure gate to get to board their flight for Melbourne. And you couldn't help but just notice that Ashwin wasn't there, of course, because his bags and him have rerouted and flying back to Chennai. And so you wonder the impact that the suddenness of his departure might even have on the group as a whole, if nobody else, knew about it. And even Kohli, who put out, there's been obviously lots of tweets and social media tributes to Ashwin. And Kohli states that he says, when you told me today that you're retiring, it made me a bit emotional. And the flashbacks of all the years I've played together. Sachin Tendulkar said, Ashwin, I've always admired how you approach the game with your mind and heart in perfect sync. He says your legacy will inspire one and all. Jim, it's no exaggeration, is it, to say that Ashwin, with all his attributes and the longevity of his career and the number of test wickets that he has taken, is just one of the modern greats?
Well, 54 balls per wicket. He's well ahead of most of the people who are in his league of over 500 test wickets. He's been very badly treated in the last couple of years. I'm not surprised that he's given it away. He scored 6 test centuries, for goodness sake. It's not as if he's not the leading spin bowler in the side. They've got Jadeja over there. They've stuffed around with him in the last 4 or 5 years. Quite often he's not been playing, and then of course he played in that final when the pitch wasn't right for him, and they probably got that wrong. But I'm sure he's a bit peeved, but he's behaved with great dignity, humility, and the way he's departed. But I don't think he's been treated at all fairly. Imagine Nathan Lyon in the last couple of years all of a sudden being left out because, we're going to play 4 quicks. No, that spinner over there might be better suited in these conditions. I bet he would have retired.
And another one who has stepped down, Tim Southee. Jim, how would you describe the impact on the game that he has had, given his, beyond the numbers, really? He debuted all the way back in 2008. He played under Stephen Fleming for New Zealand.
Yes, I can recall those early days. He came in with a bang and he finished with a bang. I think, was it 98 test sixes in the end? And he walloped a few in these last test match as well. So there he was, a very exciting cricketer from the outset. He was never high-class pace, but he did a bit with it. Either way, 391 test wickets. I think it tells you some sort of story as a new ball bowler for New Zealand. Very good hands anywhere he fielded, particularly in the slips, and that ability lower in the order, particularly from the start of his career when he slammed a half-century in a test match. So he's been a very distinctive cricketer and has also captained his country. So one of the, you hesitate to use this word all the time, but you tend to save the accolade up for the moment they retire. Yes, I would say for New Zealand, he's been a great all-rounder. His numbers tell you that. And congratulations on what he's done. And most of the time he's done it with a toothpaste ad smile on his face. He's always looked to be enjoying his cricket, and that's what you like to see. So well done from Tim Southee. Outstanding.
Well, next on Stumped, so much focus is on the players, but what about the backroom staff who play such an important role in keeping the players fit and on the park, and in particular the physios who have to contend with increased workloads for players and themselves amidst what is a packed schedule. And it seems an appropriate time to get a physio on Stumped, given that the England captain Ben Stokes has suffered a second hamstring injury inside the space of 5 months. He limped off the field on day 3 of the third test against New Zealand in Hamilton, having bowled 23 overs on the opening day, which is the most he's sent down in a single day ever. And this after building himself back up from knee surgery back in November 2023 and then a hamstring tear just last August. And elsewhere, up in Brisbane, where I've just been, and Australia's Josh Hazlewood has picked up a calf strain there and likely to miss the rest of the Border-Gavaskar Trophy. So how do physios manage the players, their workloads, their rehab, and their workloads again when they come back? And how much control do they have? Well, Kirk Russell is currently the lead physiotherapist at Gloucestershire County Cricket Club and has over 30 years experience, including working with the England men's team for 12 years. Kirk, welcome to Stumped.
Thank you very much.
Long time no see. Now, first of all, little insight just into life as an international physio, because you have travelled all over the world, haven't you?
Yeah. I worked with England for a number of years, and I think the roles sort of changed from when I first started, because I think my first tour we had no doctor, no massage therapist. It was a very small backroom staff, so you had to be the jack of all trades really, and you had to make. You were talking to the doctor back in the UK, to make medical decisions. So it wasn't easy. I remember my first tour to Australia. We had a lot of injuries in 2002, 2003, and I think from there, I think the ECB have invested hugely in sports, science and medicine since then. We learned a lot of lessons from that tour. So there's a huge staff now. Which supports the players a huge amount more,
and supports the physio as well, I imagine. Now, what of Ben Stokes in particular? A high-profile injury, the recurrence of his hamstring injury. He'd only just returned mid-series in Pakistan, having torn it during the 100 in August, and there were questions as to whether he'd bowled himself too much too soon in New Zealand, given the numbers I mentioned above, that he hadn't bowled that many overs before, and across the series he bowled more than he ever has since becoming captain, certainly. Is that a good idea? What's your take on that, looking at it from the outside?
I think when you're rehabbing players and you have your sort of return to play protocols, it's quite easy then, because you have measurements in terms of objective markers of how strong they are and what they were before. Sort of high speed running, you have data on bowling workloads before. But once they cross the line, it's sometimes very difficult. Well, it is difficult to prescribe, how much he's actually going to bowl in the match. Because obviously the game changes, maybe due to the conditions of the wicket, and if that bowler is bowling really well, then he may want to bowl more. And I guess probably with Ben Stokes being captain, it's probably even more difficult, because he probably feels for the team he needs to bowl more at that particular occasion.
Yeah. So even with Stokes, when he's asked about how he will manage himself after this little setback, he says, I won't be holding back when it comes to his workload. I mean, how do you try and manage that? Is it you as the physio, or how much influence also does a coach have when it comes to a player like Ben Stokes, who, as you rightly point out, is also the captain?
It's about a team, and it's about your science and medicine team, about your coaching staff, and obviously the player, and working out a plan that's going to work for them. And obviously, England will look back on what's happened in terms of the rehab, and maybe learn some lessons about things that that they can maybe do better. It's difficult for me to say, because obviously I've not been involved in that. But I think that's what I would do. I would go back and review and see, right, how could we have perhaps been better. And I think, unfortunately, as athletes get older, and you have injuries, then recurrence is a factor. And the fact he's had two now, it's going to be a lot of work for for Ben and the staff to to get him back to where he wants to be. But obviously he's hugely important member of the team, integral in terms of an all-rounder. And I think sometimes all-rounders are the most difficult sort of players to deal with, because you can't replace them. You can sort of replace, you rotate your seamers, you can do that, but all-rounders are very, very, especially the level that Ben performs. You don't have someone who can come in and take Ben's place. And obviously he's the captain as well, so rotation also goes out the window in that respect.
Jim Maxwell in Sydney, Kirk, you're talking about someone like Ben Stokes. While it's topical, we might just talk about Josh Hazlewood. It was a somewhat curious term used initially to describe his injury when he left the field. I've never heard it before. Are you, can I say this, aware of the term calf awareness they talked about with Josh Hazlewood when he went off before he was diagnosed with a strain of his calf? But the calf awareness, where the hell does that come from?
It's a term we use, in medicine. We're always asking the player, are you aware of anything? And sometimes it's a precursor to pain, really. I think it's sometimes difficult to determine whether it's a morning, sort of stiffness, with warming up. It's the physio skill to keep questioning that player in terms of, is it a different feeling to what you would normally feel if you were just warming up in the morning? And I guess awareness is a term where you would be a little bit worried that something else is going on.
Kirk, who is your most high-profile injury been, or maybe most expensive injury that you've been caring for? And even just that period you were with England, I'm thinking Michael Vaughan's knee when he was captain towards the end of his career, probably Andrew Flintoff, managing him through an injury period.
Yeah, I think Simon Jones's as well. That horrible
the Gabba
at Brisbane. Yeah, that was one of my first Test matches. I think that's the one I always remember as probably being the most high profile, because it was all it was there for everyone to see, and it was a really difficult road back for Simon, but he worked incredibly well. We had Loughborough then as well, so that was very, very helpful to have in terms of getting him back to getting back into playing. But yeah, I'd say they're probably the ones I sort of remember. As you mentioned, Michael's knee, and Andrew's ankles. He had issues with his ankle as well.
Final thought then, just circling back to Ben Stokes, if he wants to get back on the field and push himself as hard as ever, is there ever a time where the coaching team could take the decision out of his hands, or in your opinion maybe should take the decision out of his hands and just rest him if he will only go at one pace?
I think that's his, that's why he's so good, isn't it? Because he plays at that intensity. I think I would, if I was involved with Ben, I wouldn't want to be changing that at all. I think it's the challenge, but for the coaches and science and medicine team for him to be able to go back and play as he was before. And it's just, again, it's about teamwork, and just working hard together, and just looking at absolutely everything, to see, to get him back to, to where he was. But it is going to be difficult because you said, you have a recurrence of injury, it is high, and he's done it twice. So it's going to be tough for him. But I know he, from the outside, he works really, really hard, and he will have the support, from this. So I really wish him well, and look to see him come back.
Every England fan wants to see him back on the park as a fully fledged all-rounder. Kirk, it's been great to tap into your expertise and your experience. Thanks so much for being with us on Stumped.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Kirk Russell, now with Gloucestershire County Cricket Club, but formerly Spurs, and of course a long-time England men's test team physio as well. Merry Christmas to you both, and to all of our listeners. That is all we've got time for on this week's Stumped. So I'll say thanks to Jim Maxwell and Charu Sharma, and to all of you. Enjoy our Christmas special Best of Stumped coming in next week's show. Until then, bye-bye.
Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas.